For the longest time, record labels were your only way into the music industry, but as the internet's gotten bigger, it's become a lot easier to get a buzz and come up without a label more than ever before. Nowadays, labels aren't even a necessity anymore to get your music heard, but that doesn't mean that record labels are on their way out. The labels have still been able to stay afloat after all these years, with 2/3 of all music being dropped by labels under 3 companies. But how? How are they still able to trick unsuspecting rappers into horrible contracts? We're gonna dig into that and also point out what others have done to not get finessed by the industry. This is the problem with record labels. First off, labels still have the prestige that they've always had. Working with a huge company that pumps out superstars sounds amazing on the surface, but what labels do all the time is use language that's not really easy to understand, and they use more complicated words to hide the truth in plain sight when you look over a contract. They use words like advance or in perpetuity, instead of telling you that in advance is a loan that you gotta pay back, and in perpetuity is basically a fancy way of saying forever. Let's go back to that word, advance. This is one of the many ways they try to get you. They use the word advance, but they don't tell you that the money they give you is not just yours to keep. You gotta pay that back in the future and with interest, so you gotta pay back extra on top of that.
Super finesse. It's the highest loan you can get in history. Most artists, I would say, probably gotta pay back about, if they give you $1 million, you probably gotta pay about 8, 9 back. At least 5, 6.
No,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Because I think people might think $1 million is just $1 million. Nah, man. Like,
The point of an advance is to be used as the budget for an album, and the label hopes that you recoup or make all that money back after it's spent on making the album. To put it in perspective, labels be giving out hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. But the problem is, if the album flops, all of a sudden you're in debt to the record label. And God forbid you blew the money on cars and jewelry. And even if your album does great and you make all that money back, the label puts you back in the trap by giving you even more money that you have to pay them back. The things I'm telling you right now are things that the majority of these artists in this situation don't even know. And what makes everything even worse is that sometimes the label can be strict about how you're allowed to spend that money and only let you use it in a way that will drain your budget so fast.
they gave somebody a $2 million recording budget. In a $2 million recording budget, they wanted to book a studio every day for 6 months straight. The manager for the artist said, well, if it's $2 million, oh, we finna save some money. We about to take about like 60 to 70,000. We gonna build our own studio. They said the label told them, we won't approve of any place that we don't already pre-select. Which means you can't take the budget and go do it a cheaper way. The place they ended up having to basically settle with, it was a mansion in the Hollywood Hills that had a studio in it that they paid $3,500 a day. You're saying they got a big budget, but you won't give them the budget that they could do what they want.
And on top of that, they'll pay for expensive things with money coming out of your own budget. They have this almost complete control over your career, all because you signed above the dotted line. When you sign a contract, it's legally binding. And that means you gotta follow that contract no matter how horrible it is, because it's actually a crime to break a contract's rules. By getting you to sign a contract, they trap you and they basically do whatever they want. For example, a 360 deal is whenever a label gets paid from every source of income from your career. Streaming, tours, merch, every single last dollar and cent goes back to the label before you get any of it. And when they get it first, they're not going to be generous. When they have this much control over you, they'll give you as little as possible while they're rolling in money. And when they get this control, sometimes they'll do anything to keep you distracted from what's really going on. Doing things such as giving you a brand new car. This is what happened to Lil Wayne when his label gave him free Bentleys to keep him satisfied when they got away with stuff behind the scenes. And it's even crazier when artists pass away. When a rapper leaves this earth, their career blows up even more. In the case of Juice WRLD, his label Grade A was rolling in money from the new fame coming in, and the label has been accused of using his passing for profit, using recycled verses and releasing posthumous projects just for money with unfinished songs having new features on them. When your music starts going up and you're starting to get popular to the point where labels are hitting you up, remember, a record label is a company, a business. The point of a business is to make money, and in an industry as cruel as the music industry, a label will do just about anything, even if they crash and burn in the process. If they're hitting you up, you're popping. You do not need them at that point. They're calling you because you're big enough to have them thinking you're gonna make them a lot of money. And in an age where the internet has changed rappers' entire lives, bringing them to fame, it's become a lot easier to do it independently. Take Brent Faiyaz, for example. He made his own indie label back in 2015 and has made a career for himself in a landscape full of snakes ready to backstab you. He's used his platform to help other independent artists get their shine, like Tommy Richmond, before he even dropped $1 Million Baby. While Brent isn't really a rapper, Chance the Rapper has had a crazy career while turning down Def Jam, Columbia, Republic Records, and more to stay independent. He has won Grammys and has gone diamond in this whole time. He has never signed a contract. He was working with Kanye West, Lil Wayne, Young Thug, the biggest names in the rap game, and he was starting to look like competition to Drake. Russ has built his entire career off his back on social media and has never bowed down to a label, having a diehard fan base with tens of millions of fans, doing worldwide tours. And even though he isn't respected as much as others in mainstream hip-hop, he's still making so much money that he'll never worry about money problems ever again. Joey Badass made his own indie label called Pro Era, putting on himself and other artists pushing forward a 90s inspired boom bap sound for a while. While these rappers have gotten mainstream attention from the industry, that isn't exactly the case for these other rappers, but they've still been able to make a name for themselves. Suicide Boys have built a career spanning over 10 years off their backs as a rap duo coming up in the SoundCloud era, doing mainstream numbers so big that they're streamed more than many rappers you've heard of, outstreaming Trippie Redd, Pop Smoke, and Lil Durk, to name a few. Bones has become a SoundCloud legend by inspiring and setting up the underground SoundCloud scene, leaving a legacy all without signing to any of the majors. Working with A$AP Rocky and Juicy J, for example, and still maintaining his own career with millions of fans and a die-hard fan base. And another thing, what people seem to forget is that streaming can actually make you a lot of money. If you only got a couple hundred monthly listeners on Spotify, then yeah, you're not gonna make anything, but if you got millions, you're gonna make bank. The closest thing these rappers have done to working with a label is signing something called a distribution deal. A distribution deal is one of the most underrated deals in the entire industry, with the artists involved keeping their masters and only giving a cut of their revenue to the distributor. But they still have a lot more freedom in their career than the artist signed to a major. Another thing these rappers do is start up an indie label. This way they can put their music out themselves and not only keep all the profits to their music, and at the same time, independent labels usually care more about the artist than just making a quick buck. This is what happened to Tommy Richmond, as I mentioned earlier. Staying independent is way easier nowadays than it ever was. As long as you have a manager or even a team if you got an indie label, you don't need labels like Atlantic or Def Jam to micromanage your career for you and finesse you so hard that you gotta sue them back just to get the money. It's really your choice whether you sign to a major or hold yourself up without one.